Now it's question time. As usual, let's start from the public in the room. So anyone who wants to ask question to Roberto, Laura, or Carlo?
Hi, I'm David Douard, and I'm working with Roberto.
Not closer.
With Roberto on the software heritage project. I'm a software engineer in there. Just a small question about, I mean, what was interesting, one interesting part of your presentation was about how much you had to make assumptions in your process of preserving this piece of software. What is best, and what are our recommendations in the software acquisition process to properly document all these steps, and how much of these steps are actually some personal guesses or opinionated decision, I'd say? Well, what is a proper way to store this part of the process and the information?
Good. Well, as I said, I am an amateur historian, so I think that the real answer should come from the techniques and the practices that historians exploit. Again, you can put a lot of information apart, but at the given moment you have to say, okay, this is version 6, and then you can put in the README whatever, a long history, an explanation of what to say. So, say on a technical point, you have a place where you can tell the whole story. On the other side, what is proper to do, what is not proper to do, well, that, I mean, I guess that the historian should tell us how they work, and I think that, well, they discuss a lot.
Thank you. Please come.
Hello, I have a question. On the first presentation, there was a demonstration of the program that was recovered, as soon as I understood. And also the fact that you get the source, you get everything. How do you go to the testing and evaluation of the correctness of the software as it was supposed to work? So how can people be confident that the source you have in the archive are actually the source without bugs, or if bugs there were, there are the bugs that were not discovered by the original writer of the software? This applies to the two presentations, in fact.
So first, Carlo, and then Laura.
Now, I think there are two. What we as curators should guarantee is the fidelity of what is in digital in the store, digital store, to the original material. And I think that the discussion before by Ronald, he had some tools that essentially cross-checked. I don't remember what, but I mean, that is the idea. If the version that we have saved is of a running software or of a software with bugs, well, that can come along, can be discovered only by looking at different information from the authors, if they are available, from documents associated with the code, etc. I don't know if you answered your question.
Some of the documents you showed us, for example, this part of portrait listing with annotations, that might correspond to corrections. And how can you check these corrections are in the repository or not?
I told you. In that case, it was decision of myself. I thought, since she spent time writing these things, I think that she tried that. Okay. Even though I have no documents, that he did, that she did. Okay.
Okay, Roberto first and then Laura, feel free to unmute
So-
yourself.
I may add some comments on the question by Fabrice is pretty interesting here. You have seen in this previous session how many different facets come in software preservation. So here in this session, we are focused on just one tiny part, which is actually making sure you record properly the history that you rebuild of the source code that you get. So there are two different things. If you get the source code directly from the author in digital form, and usually you are kind of safe, this is the version you have. When you do need to do OCR, that's another story because you can have mistakes in it, etc. And the swap process that we didn't detail properly today, it's too complicated, actually supports the possibility of coming back and saying, we made a mistake, this was not 00, this was 00, like in the example that Ron showed. And have a second version saying we improved and why we improved it. But then your question goes further. It is, how can I check that the software actually still runs, so this works properly, etc. And this was one of the issues mentioned partly by the people in the software preservation network. They didn't have time to go into the details, but they are interested, for example, in keeping a set of emulators running to actually get the ability to rerun the software with the machine or the emulator of the machine that comes from back in time. So remember when I said we are just a small piece of the puzzle? So we are just a small piece of the puzzle. There are many others that are needed to actually get the full preservation in place.
Okay, Laura, would you like to add anything? Laura, you're muted.
I basically agree with Carlo and Roberto. I mean, sometimes you also have to make a choice. In the case of Taumus, that's, I think, the part that Fabrizio referred to. We had these annotations on Fortran listings, and we had to make a choice, as Carlo said. We had to consider these two different versions, so possibly an error fix or possibly an improvement, but that's just the idea. It's just to preserve as much software as possible. So we realized the two versions to preserve both the original code and the annotated code, but that's a choice.
Yes, but you reach a point where you could execute your code.
In that case, it is basically.
In one case, you gave us a demo, a small demo. So this code could be executed, or was it recorded from a very old?
In that case, you basically cannot execute it. It's a very old Fortran listing, so you would need a Fortran compiler, an old hardware. So.
Let me point out, maybe it was not so clear. The first presentation of Taumus was done in the context of a show in Pisa, and which had other things, and one was presenting the Taumus synthesizer. But what you saw is just the result of an emulator developed in 2018. So the idea there was to recover what the sound and the kind of music that you could hear was. It was not that code. Okay.
Yes,
As
sorry if
Roberto
maybe
point out,
that was not clear from the presentation, but it's an emulator indeed. We did not run
Yes, yes,
but run by the code of.
Okay, so really, so it means that you reach a point where the code you had could execute on that emulator.
Yes.
That was just emulating the hardware.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you very much.